this brought you on the hunt for finding a solution to this problem that's a marketing problem, because it's not persuasive enough. It's not persuading the hearts and minds of women before they're even in that situation. And you and I both know the importance of persuasion, and in marketing we call it touch points, right? But the many touch points. I mean, we're not selling a Butterfinger here. It's not like just an impulse buy. It is something that has so many different areas that you're combating, from friends to social media to other people that have had abortions to parents to the difficult life situations that so many of these women are in. And so you're on a hunt to find that solution, to find a program that is outshining the rest. And then you bring it all full circle within your book. And so I'd really love for you to share with us the solution that you found, and I want all of our listeners to grab this book, and then we'll talk about what we can do later on. But let's start with that book.
Yeah. So let me set it up with a couple of points, because I feel like This is a great opportunity to educate
absolutely
people about like how it really works out there on the front lines.
That's right.
So I was talking about the Google ads a while ago, direct response. Believe me, I love that, because you get immediate results. You're helping a woman in an emergency 911 situation. You're moving her from about to make a very terrible decision over here to choosing life. It's the stories that come from these kinds of things are absolutely beautiful. It's amazing, right? That being said, direct response is what I call a marginal solution. Why? It's a marginal solution because the vast majority of young women in our country already know the name Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
And so when this situation happens, and they know of course they know what Planned Parenthood does. And so when this situation happens to them, they don't necessarily need to go here and do a search about, where can I get an abortion or all those kinds of things. Instead, it's like Planned Parenthood. That's where I go.
That's right.
And this is a huge issue. And now we're going to get into the real amazing story and the opportunity. There was research done by the Charlotte Lozier Institute in 2015, where I'm so thankful they did this research. Where they actually had it was probably someone that was sponsoring the research, one of these pro-life organization, but they did brand recognition research. And of course, they asked, like, what is brand? Yes, this is nationwide research. Brand recognition of Planned Parenthood. The number was 93%. That's up there, John. That's up there with the Coke and McDonald's. It's like, in other words, basically, we could say almost every young woman in the United States knows the brand name Planned Parenthood, and they know what they do. Yeah. So if you're on the other team, this is disconcerting, right? This is not good. Unless, of course, you have a matching brand that's just as powerful. So what did the research show there? Well, first of all, I think the Charlotte Lozier Institute even had a difficult time selecting.
I bet.
A brand that they could actually put forward and ask the question. So they chose Option Line, which is a national call center that's run for many years. It's run by Heartbeat International. And they've been doing advertising for a long time. So, okay, we'll pick that one, and we'll do the same. We'll ask the same questions, the same questions that showed Planned Parenthood 93%. We'll ask that of women about Option Line.
Yeah.
The brand recognition was 8%. All right.
Yeah.
You're a marketer. You know exactly what I'm about to say. It's like you have no chance. You're like the game is over.
That's right.
Before it even starts. Because women don't know you exist.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, if you look deeper in that research, probably half or so of the women in our country don't even know what a pregnancy help center is as a category of product and service. It's like you and I saying, if I showed you this and you go, what is that? Right? They don't know. about the existence of such a thing. So already, before we even talk about a specific brand name of an organization, we've already lost at the category level, that we would call it. This is like, when you're a marketer, this is not good news, right?
No.
It's like, so we call that the brand gap. And why is this so important? Because I'll give you my own story here. We all have them. If I questioned you, you'd come up with something too. This works on marketers as well. And you have to win that mind share, as I call it, about your product relative to your competition, even before your customer comes into the market for your product or service, right? This is why Apple, for example, McDonald's, Coke, Ford, which is the story I'm going to tell, and all the other big companies, why do you think they constantly advertise, like all over the place, never stop? Because they have to get to the number one position in their category in your head, so that if and when you come into the market for their product, you go straight to them, right? This happened to me recently. It's like, look, I've wanted a truck, but I'm from Oklahoma, right?
There you go.
Living in Texas, I wanted a truck for a long time. Like to hunt, like to fish. Seems like the kind of tool I should have in the toolbox.
Amen. Me too. Yep.
So when this happened to me, this would have been about a year and a half ago. Now, I should have been out like doing research, like Ford F-150 versus Chevy this and Toyota that, GM, whatever. I didn't do a lick of research. I went straight to the Ford dealer and said, "Show me your F-150s," right?
Yep.
They had sold me on this, planted themselves as number one in my mind, probably, gosh, probably for a decade or more.
I bet. Built Ford tough. Yep.
Yeah, all that stuff. So we talk about stories and narratives. So Ford had successfully created a narrative, and I wrote myself into that story. That's how branding works, right? You keep telling that story over and over and over in such a way that's so compelling and resonates. The consumer starts to write his or herself into that story. And it's like it becomes part of their identity even before they buy the product. This is why it works so well, right?
That's right.
And so there I got my F-150 now. I love that thing.
Yeah,
So here I am. I'm looking at this, the research, back to our topic at hand. I'm looking at the research. I'm like, man, that is really, really, really bad news.
Yeah.
The way that we at Heroic Media initially tried to help solve that problem was we took our 30-second TV commercials from years past and repurposed them and started running them in Oklahoma City specifically on YouTube as pre-roll ads. So pre-roll means you run the ad before the woman sees whatever YouTube video she wants to see. And then we followed that up with research, and I'm spitballing a bit here, but we went from like 13% category recognition to later on, like 2.5 years later, it was like 40%. So it works.
Yeah, it did. In Oklahoma City, absolutely.
It's wonderful. And then I'm learning a lot more, right? I'm probably 5 years in now, and I'm like, yeah, but I always thought to myself, if you had a strong brand name from an organization, you can kill two birds with one stone. You can brand that organization and brand the category at the same time through the organization. It's a stronger way to do it, but I just didn't know. I hadn't seen anything out there of any company, any pro-life pregnancy center that done anything like this. As I write in my book, for most centers, when they go through their budgeting process, if there's any money left over at the end, someone might raise their hand and say, maybe we should do some advertising, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of, if you want to win the brand game, as I say in the book, if you want to win the brand game, that has to be the first thing you talk about. What does it take to win the brand game, to win brand recognition, brand preference, and then brand choice, so that we can win the market share battle against our competitor? What does it take to do that? Invest in that, and then let's talk about the rest of the expense items in our budget, right? This is not how the pregnancy help center world thinks.
Yeah, agreed.
Until as God would have it, a little over 3 years ago, speaking opportunity up in St. Louis. That wasn't the primary reason we went. A generous benefactor of ours, who also has an incredible business background. She invited my colleague Karen Garnett and I, up to St. Louis. And she goes, you have to go see this center called Thrive Express Women's Healthcare. Sure. Well, I never turned down the opportunity to visit another pro-life pregnancy center. Right?
Yeah.
Let's go do it. Now, honestly, John, I've seen a lot of them. I was certain it'd be probably pretty cool, but I was expecting probably more of the same.
Mm-hmm.
And already I was intrigued. I was like, Thrive, man, that's a very cool aspirational name. Love that. I love that they're using women's healthcare. Awesome, because that's what women are thinking. We can talk about that later. Women have been conditioned to think abortion is a medical choice. That's how they look at it. We may not like that, but that's how they look at it. So if you're a good marketer, you have to resonate with that. You can't push back against it. You just have to roll with it to get them in. So I'm already liking what I see. And then I walk into the center and I'm like, oh man, I am in the presence of something different.
Wow.
This is more like walking into, I'd almost call it like a retail space that's using colors. It's using the structure. It's using the way all of the team there dress. It's using the words that they use. And I was like, wow, I cannot wait to hear more about this.
Yeah.
And that was my first time to meet, who's now a dear friend and is also on the board of Heroic Media, Bridget Van Means, who is the vision leader, the CEO. I don't know exact title, president, but anyway, she leads Thrive, and she's really the one who put this plan in place. She didn't come up with the name, but when she came to that center, maybe like 10 years ago, she saw the potential of this, and it was in such a situation that when she came there, she was basically arriving as a rescue. Like the company was like 30 days away from going under. She also has that marketing and sales background, very successful. And she just did something very different. She said, you know what? I'm not going to do the typical pregnancy help center model thing. I'm just going to bring forward what I know works in terms of sales and marketing, branding. We're going to do that. So we're going to make it beautiful. We're going to run a significant branding campaign using all the advertising vehicles we can in St. Louis. We're going to run big reach and frequency, which just basically means translating to spending a lot of money.
Yep.
And we're going to do it without stopping ever. And we're going to do this, and we're going to be successful. We're going to become the preferred brand in St. Louis over Planned Parenthood. And when that happens, we're going to win the market share war against them. And I don't think she knew this at the time, but she probably intuited it. And we're going to close them down. Their abortion numbers are going to go so low that they're basically going to hightail it out of here. And that's exactly what happened. Took about 5 years to do that, but it happened. Planned Parenthood left St. Louis in, I think, like 2019 or 2020, something like that. It went from doing 5,000 abortions down to about, single digits. Just incredible story. And I'm sitting there, and it took me a while. Again, I'm a little slow sometimes. It took me a while to kind of put it all together. I was like, this is the answer. Because what you won't hear in the pro-life movement, that's why I sent you some of that data ahead of time.
Yeah.
It's very, I don't know, if you step out of pro-life and you're just someone totally objective observer, and people started using words like, who's winning? There's no data that says pro-life is winning. When I see that from pro-life leaders, it makes me very unhappy, because it's not true.
Agreed.
Winning meaning what? Well, it just depends on what you mean. If you mean we've made some significant advances on the moral war with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, I'll give you some credit there. Absolutely. Laws teach. They're important. Don't get me wrong. But if you want to talk about spreadsheets and choices for abortion versus choices for life, we are not only losing and have been losing, we're losing badly. So you go into a typical city, I'd say it's for every abortion-determined woman who ultimately chooses life, let's do it in percentages. So if 10 women choose life, there's 90 that choose abortion. And I'm probably being generous there. It's probably even more like 5 to 95. Okay. From my perspective, I'm a marketing guy. I like to win market share. I like to beat the competition. That's losing. That's not winning. And so here we have this one. So I call it like, I like to use images. I think about Mount Everest. We're like halfway up the mountain. We've been circling around the middle of the mountain for years, right? The whole pro-life movement, because as the data I sent you, even most Americans now are more pro-choice than they are pro-life. So we haven't really we're like doing a lot of stuff. Like we're like moving around the middle. But the mountain climbers want to get to the summit. That's what winning is. That's what success is. I can't imagine any climber of Mount Everest is happy getting halfway up. There's actually, if you know the word mediocre, it means halfway, right? It means you're trying. When you're mediocre, it doesn't mean you're like doing nothing. It's better than doing nothing, but it's halfway up. And I'm not for a moment discounting the passion and the desire of the people who are involved. It's just that clearly there's no strategy, there's no playbook that has ever got people up to the summit. The overturning of Roe v. Wade may be somewhat helpful. We can talk about why not so helpful in a second, of moving up a little bit. But it's only going to move up a little bit. And yet, here comes this organization walking from the summit down the middle of the mountain to meet us there and says, hey, you know, we used to be here with you too. And then we tried this thing, right? We tried this new business plan, this new marketing plan, and it took a while. It took 5 years, but we stuck with it. We didn't give up. We have an excellent service. We did an unbelievable marketing program, branding program. And you know what, guys? We won. We were at the summit, like looking down at y'all down here. So we're coming down to you now to say, look, here's the plan. You want to copy the plan? Would you like to try this? And I hope all of us would say, yeah, because y'all did it, man. You did exactly what we all want. It's like you won. You got more women who are seeking an abortion to choose life instead of choosing abortion. So even if that was 51 to 49, at least we could look up on the scoreboard at the end of the day and say we won. Because John, every day in our country, if you talk, I'll use football terms, that game is played every day in every city, and the score is 95 Planned Parenthood, 5 us, 5 our teams. In every city except one, and that's St. Louis.
St. Louis, yeah. Well, and I want to take a moment and I want to talk briefly about the overturning of Roe v. Wade, because I do believe that there's this false notion that since that happened, and you'll hear things like, oh, it's pushed off to the states now. And I live in Texas and I'm good to go. You know, and then you also hear, I got it yesterday. I got a notification from Texas Right for Life, and they're doing good work. But it was just showing the Planned Parenthood centers that are going up on our borders here. But it's still kind of missing the point of the direction that Planned Parenthood is going. And honestly, for me, it was scales falling off my eyes when you started talking to me about the direction that the abortion industry is going. And I think all the men listening and everybody in the world needs to understand this. So if you'll take a moment and talk about, we'll agree that Roe v. Wade was great from a legislative standpoint. Overturning that was great from a legislative standpoint, but it's actually not helped. And actually, even with this Gallup poll that you sent me recently, it actually looks like it turned the minds of many closer to the pro-choice than the pro-life movement. And we're in a downturn now in this year than we've really ever been, at least in the last 10, 15 years from this Gallup poll. So I'd love for you to talk just a moment about that, kind of set the game that we are playing here, and then we can go back to Thrive and how they are winning.
Yeah, love that. So let me say something, and I want you and the listeners to hang with me on this. Don't let your heads explode. Let me give the context to what I'm about to say, because you might go, "What are they talking about?" Yeah. If you want to use that word choice, that war is over, and the choice side won. People are like, "Oh my gosh, I'm talking about that from the." I'm not talking about that from the law's perspective. I'm talking about it from the front line perspective and the provision and offering of abortion services. Why is the war over? Because if I go back, let's say I'll go back 20 years. it certainly is no doubt that laws would have been much more effective at stopping abortion, because abortions were, for the most part, procedures that were done at a certain place, on a certain day, at a certain time, done by a certain person. Well, that's pretty easy to police, right? You can go to that place and you can cordon it off and shut it down, right?
Yeah.
What was happening subtly at first and then accelerating reasonably rapidly is the abortion industry began to completely transform itself in terms of the product that it offers. And that's what we call, there's lots of names for it. The pro-life organizations like to call it chemical abortion. Fine. The way the market would call it is abortion pill or medication abortion or DIY abortion, self-managed abortion. There's lots of different names for it. But this changed the game completely, because now abortion has essentially become a pharmaceutical strategy, or let's just call it a medication, a drug strategy. And already this year, we're closing out 2022. Already more than half of abortions this year are by the abortion pill, and that's accelerating rapidly.
Wow.
Like in the next couple of years, it'll be 70, 80%. Why is this a problem? Because you can't police it. You can try, but I would ask any of the folks listening, we all have heard about the war on drugs for decades now, right?
Right.
It doesn't work. Are you going to get some victories here and there? Yes. Where you can stand in front of the press corps and go, wow, look what we did. But in the main, it won't stop the flow of those drugs because the demand is so high for those drugs. It allows a woman to have a private abortion, if you want to call it that, in the privacy of her own home. And these pills can be transported numerous ways. And people might say, yeah, but our state, they put in that it's illegal to ship abortion pills by mail. I'd be like, yeah. First of all, many of the abortion pill companies are overseas. They could care less what the laws are, right? They're going to ship them. And I would just say it's so easy. If you're a woman here in Texas, for example, and you can't find it, but you have friends out in California, or you have friends who know friends in California. California will be probably and New York will be manufacturing these or bringing them in to distribute through various means to abortion illegal states by the hundreds and thousands, right?
Well, and we need to understand that it's not literally like titled abortion pill. It is medicine that is used in instances of miscarriages or, trying to induce labor and things like that. So there's exactly. There's so many different ways to get around it, and that it can't be policed.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's those two drugs, misoprostol and Miffy. Sorry, I'm old. The two drugs are pharmaceuticals used for other purposes.
Yeah,
just they're used in very high dosages to achieve this. The first dose basically cuts off nutrition and oxygen from the fetus, so the fetus dies. You take the next dose and that expels the contents of the uterus, right? That's how the regimen works. And so here we are. And so back to my choice as one, nobody can stop this. The cat's out of the bag. This is modern abortion, if you want to call it that, from here forward. Yes. The pro-life movement was built around the older model of abortions happening in clinics. And again, I'm not against pro-life legislation because it's powerful as a teacher, for sure, right? But its practical effect of stopping the flow of the abortion pill is practically negligible, right? It's not going to work. Obviously, more and more young women are learning about how to access these things, like every day, more and more of them. Yeah. And we can't stop it, except now let's get back to branding and thrive. So I would argue, forget about trying to stop the supply of abortion. In that game, they won. Yeah. This abortion bill, they won the game. It's over. Stop it. Quit wasting your time there. Right.
Yeah.
However, as marketers and salespeople, we know that you can always win a customer if you convince them that what you're offering is a better product and service, a better value for them.
That's right.
Right.
Apple, Ford, etc. Yeah.
You name a lot of companies. This is exactly what Thrive achieved in St. Louis. And John, they did it. They did that well before this massive increase in the abortion pill. So it shows you that no matter what the product is from Planned Parenthood, whether it was, the former old model of in-clinic abortions or the new model of distribution of the abortion pill, you can still win in terms of demand if you come forward with an excellent marketing program, which includes the product, includes, everything, and primarily that branding program. And when I went back and analyzed the branding program, so we're talking specifically about the advertising now, it was remarkable to me why it worked, because some centers might hear this and they go, well, we'll just start doing more advertising. No, it's like there's three phases to this. There's a recognition phase. So you're building brand recognition. That takes a year or two. And then that moves into brand preference, which is where ultimately is what's going to determine whether you win or not, the market share war. Brand preference can be in someone's head. I gave my Ford F-150 story, like it's probably in my head for 10 years before I came into the market and made the purchase and won. So in the same way, Thrive in St. Louis, like I said, never stopped running this branding program ever, even to this day. And so women had it in their head. They recognized it, and then they began to prefer Thrive. And then eventually, maybe if and when, it could be years down the line, they face an unexpected pregnancy, they call first who they trust. And Thrive had earned that number one position in their head. Basically, you don't push Planned Parenthood out. That doesn't happen, but you push them down, right?
Yeah.
Now you're the number one. And I'll tell you, the proof that it's actually won, that they won like completely, is now the Thrive brand is so powerful in St. Louis that Thrive is now moved to that enviable position that marketers love. Is the majority of the clients that come in from referrals from previous clients.
That's right.
That's when the game's over. You've won, right?
Yeah.
You've won the game. So they won the game. And here's the thing, and I believe you got to see some of the advertisements.
I did, yeah.
But the advertisements are, it's like they're not made for you and me, that's for sure, right?
Not at all.
Probably your first reaction. They're clearly the words that are used, some of the words I don't even recognize. They're like, teenage lingo. The words they use, the colors they use, the sounds, everything is built around resonating with what those young women already love in terms of other things that they look at in their lives, right?
Yeah.
Other brands that they see. For example, Thrive keeps a pulse on what Kim Kardashian is doing.
Right.
Why? Certainly not because of her moral standards, but because young women look to her as a fashion icon, right? As a fashion trendsetter. Mm-hmm. So you want to understand those things, because when you take some of those elements that are clearly resonating with young women with what Kim Kardashian is doing, and you move that into your branding program, it says to the young woman, these people care about me, that they took the time to actually love what I love or care about what I care about. And they're integrating that into their program, and it resonates, right? When it resonates, you're starting to win. And you're starting to build up that number one position.
Absolutely.
In the minds of the young women. You're starting to win their mind share, as I call it. So if you can win mind share of the majority of your target market, that leads to winning market share.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, no, and I think it's great. And I want to go back to your experience when you walked into that Thrive store, because you and I both know as marketers that good marketing helps a bad product fail sooner, right? And so if we're good at the marketing, which they were, but women are showing up to this event and it just looks like a wall of diapers and, a couple older women that have great hearts and are wonderful people, but really don't speak that language and that lingo, there's this huge disconnect. They leave. You're not getting those referrals for sure. And so I guess trying to formulate my question here, how do we franchise that? How is that something that can be brought into Dallas Fort Worth where I live, or, any of these other areas? I know that's what you're looking towards, and I want to kind of give you the floor there and talk about the future of Thrive and how it's spreading. And you've got some really cool things that are going on.
Yeah, thank you. I love the beautiful example you gave, because the marketing is hard. Successful marketing is hard. It has to resonate through the entire, we call it market to message match, or sometimes called product to message match. And so exactly what you're saying, if you run all those advertisements and you've taken over the number one preferred brand, and a woman needs it, and she calls you, and you go, and she goes in, and what she sees in your center, there's a complete dissonance with what she expected based on everything that she had learned about your brand. You're going to lose, right? She's out. If we could use St. Paul as, you're a clanging gong, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And she's going to turn right around and hightail it the other way, right? So that's the beautiful thing about Thrive, is it's consistent throughout. The expectation of what the woman has built up in her mind through the branding, there's a consistent 100% match with what she experiences when she goes through Thrive, with everything she sees, everything she experiences in her interactions with the people at Thrive, everything with the follow-up, which is all about empowerment. It's not just about, hey, save your baby, have a nice day.
That's right.
It's about, we're here for you because, as Bridget puts it, we know that you are buying a future, and we want to help you get whatever future you want, and help you understand that this child can be a huge part of helping you achieve what you want, right? That's a totally different mindset, but it works, and it's what women want to hear, and it's authentic, because Thrive backs it up with the programs that make that happen for women.
Yeah.
So to your question about franchising, so when Bridget and her team actually built the playbook to franchise this years back and started down that path. But again, this was before like COVID, before like telehealth and all those things. And it was like a brick and mortar strategy. And even when Heroic Media started talking with the Thrive team about, you need to expand this into other markets, we got to do this in other places, it was still based on a brick and mortar strategy, which is kind of difficult because brick and mortar costs a lot of money and it takes a lot of time. So the typical model is you'd have to get that up and running, and then you start running your brand advertising program.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
But what Thrive noticed, especially as Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry started shifting into the abortion pill as their model, they started doing a lot more telehealth, right? Telehealth distribution. And COVID massively accelerated that, right? Based on everybody being stranded at home. And so Thrive quite quickly picked up on that and said, we have to do the same thing. We have to take our wonderful experience that women have when they come to Thrive inside of our centers, virtualize that completely, even to the point where the background here, when a woman is having a telehealth visit, looks like she's in a Thrive center.
That's right.
That's how detailed they have it. It's amazing. And they started testing that. And John, it worked like gangbusters. I'll tell you one of the main reasons I think why. There was a couple of reasons, but young women, because of these, they're used to FaceTiming with all their friends. And because of COVID, actually, I'm generalizing a bit here, but prefer this kind of interaction. Yeah. Especially if they know all it takes is we're going to have an interaction and send me the abortion pill. They'd rather do it this way.
Right.
And go show up at an office. Right. So Thrive was simply stepping into that story of young women already wanting to do telehealth. Beautiful.
Sure.
The second thing, in the brick and mortar model, so you have an abortion determined woman, you get her on the phone with a pro-life pregnancy center, even a very skilled one who knows the things to say, who has successfully books an appointment. Usually the fastest you're going to get her in is the next day. So that's a 24-hour waiting period. These women don't stop researching. They keep looking. So even at the great centers, the no-show rate for appointments is 30, 40% sometimes.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
In the telehealth model, as soon as the initial phone screener comes on, she gets you onto the telehealth call immediately.
Yeah.
So Thrive calls that the speed to nurse protocol. It used to be,
Wow.
in the brick and mortar, it's 24 hours, and the speed
Right.
in the telehealth is 24 seconds. Right.
Wow.
This is huge because the woman gets immediate help. And the woman that she and the Thrive professional she's talking to is not a counselor. It's a
Yeah.
registered nurse
Mm.
who has all the talking points. This is absolutely essential because remember, young women have been conditioned to think that abortion is a medical choice. So again, back to our marketing, you're resonating with everything she expects. She's expecting this to be a medical visit. All of a sudden, she's clearly in the presence of a registered nurse, medical. And very importantly, that medical nurse, from the young woman's point of view, is an authority.
Yeah.
Right. So if the registered nurse does an excellent job of her talking points, again, helping the woman, not being manipulative, but helping understand information, helping calm her down, understand the facts, it works. It works like gangbusters. And here's the another amazing thing is, does it mean you don't need brick and mortar? I don't think so. But it means that you can start the branding program immediately.
Yeah, exactly.
Get in there. Like if someone in, I don't know, Austin said tomorrow, here's the money. Can we start running the brand advertising program? But yes, starting we have to get the advertising up and running. In a couple of weeks, we can get going.
That's right.
Because that registered nurse can be anywhere, right? It's the internet. So she can be in Chicago, Florida, California, Washington, Texas, doesn't matter. So it's not the model is not beholden to a brick and mortar strategy. So we worked with Thrive and launched this in Oklahoma City in July, in Philadelphia in August. And so it's the branding program. It's that early phase of building recognition, right? Building recognition. So this is not direct response. The way I would think about it, if I was someone investing in this program, if you're investing in direct response, like the Google ads, you're going to have more what I would call like more of an immediate satisfaction.
Sure, exactly.
The decision for life is probably going to come within like weeks of the advertising. So you're moving like you get that quick hit, if you will, feeling of success. Branding is moving young women from Planned Parenthood spreadsheet onto Thrive spreadsheet, but in the future.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And by the way, much more in the future in terms of the numbers. So you don't get that immediate hit, but remember, direct response is limited in terms of the gross number of women that you can get over here because most of them are going to Planned Parenthood anyway. You don't even get a chance to advertise to them. Branding takes longer, but branding gives you a chance to win the game. The direct response, you're not going to win the game in terms of the scoreboard. Branding gives you the chance to actually win the game against Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry like Thrive did in St. Louis.
And that's the message. And that's what we need to really be pushing for individuals to understand that, it might not be immediate, but the immediate work that we've been doing over the last 20 years that we've been losing and losing dramatically. And so, this idea is really transformative. And I'm so excited to have it. And I know, as St. John Paul II said, we are called up to stand for life and we're called to work and pray against abortion. But outside of praying and buying your book, which is going to be in the show notes, what can men do, right? Because we've been intentionally, systematically marginalized from the abortion conversation. You and I haven't had time to talk about that, but we will right now. The abortion industry has intentionally removed us. We don't have a voice because we ourselves can't get pregnant. And honestly, another aspect when I've been reflecting on this and talking to men is that they see like ending abortion as kind of like ending world hunger. It's just like insurmountable for them. So it's like, what do they, how do they get started or what can they do? Well, I'll just pray about it every day, which is incredibly important. And the Holy Spirit is definitely, working in the lives and hearts of men and our neighbors close to us as we do that. But what are some of the things that men can be doing to help heroic media to help thrive, to help transform this understanding of the I guess the abortion war, and move people into life?
First, I would say in your immediate environment, which could be your wife, your children, maybe some of them are girls, impact them by being an awesome, virtuous man,
Amen.
right? If you're an awesome, virtuous man and you're teaching your children correctly, it's much more likely, not certain for sure in our decadent culture, but it's much more likely that you will be able to persuade your young girls who will become young women to be chaste, right? They also have the opportunity to spread that to their friends. So I'd say there's a network effect here. Men probably don't realize how important that is, just to be incredible Catholic holy men pursuing holiness and everything, and how that can affect their daughters.
Yeah.
And what that can mean in terms of their daughters affecting their friends, and ultimately they're not going to get pregnant because they're going to save themselves for marriage, right?
Yeah.
I know that sounds old-fashioned these days, but that's what we should be doing, right?
That's right. Truth is
so
truth.
now,
That's right.
So now let me jump back to our decadent culture, which is kind of the driving narrative, unfortunately, these days. John, I'm still challenging myself in this thinking, but I think about it a lot because I have a lot of growth I need in this area. So what do I mean by that? It always hits me. I think often about it. It's a bit of I know it hits Catholics when we hear this reading at Mass. It's a bit odd when, I'm going to mess this up a little bit. You'll know the passage I'm talking about when Jesus is teaching and some people show up and say, your mother and your brothers they want to talk to you or something. Yeah. Because who are my mother, my brothers? These are my mother and brothers. The way I look at that is God simply looks at all of us as family, right? And using Father John Riccardo's, borrowing from him, it's like God wants his family back. And then I go, okay, if you really look at these young women when they come in, what is it that they're looking for? And you realize that they're no different than any of us. They just want to have a great life. They just want to be happy, right? And so if we use the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if any of your listeners aren't familiar with that, please look it up. So there's the bottom layers are like basic security and, provision so that you can live. But then as you move up the pyramid, what people are really looking for is things like purpose. And, ultimately the top level is self-actualization, which I think is basically saying you're fulfilling mission and purpose in your life. Wonderful. It's like where we all want to be, because that's ultimately where you're going to find great joy as you look back on your life. And it's like, okay, when I look at my children are adults now, but I still even now feel that responsibility. Now I'm not involved in their security anymore. They take care of that for themselves, but I'm still involved in their self-actualization. I'm still a mentor to them. I'm still a model to them. I'm still a coach to them, right? Yet I think Jesus is challenging us and saying, that's beautiful, and you are responsible for that. But those young women that we're all talking about that today are going to get pregnant, become abortion-minded, they're my family. They're God's family, and therefore they're your family too.
Amen.
And that's really challenging to me because, John, the truth is, am I ready to step up and commit to those young women in the same way that I would commit to my 3 children? And I'm not there yet. I'm not. I guess you could argue, well, Brett, you work in this full time. Okay. But I could do more. I could certainly give more financially than I'm giving. I could certainly give more time to it. And I'm just not there. I pray about that a lot. I want to work toward that because I think about models like, Dorothy Day.
Yeah, Dorothy Day.
Mother Teresa. You want to time out, that's like all in, right?
Right.
Those two women were just, they're amazing. Joan of Arc, just like all in. And I'm not there. And someone could say, well, maybe God's not calling you to that. Okay, possibly. But but I still think even if I'm not called to be that level, I certainly can move more in that direction.
Amen.
And I would challenge men to think about that. It's like, thank you for praying. It's beautiful. But I just talked with you about, here's a model that worked. It saved untold a number of lives compared to the typical pregnancy center model. It has the opportunity to become the first national counter brand of Planned Parenthood based on a model that actually beat Planned Parenthood in a large city. It takes money to do that. It's brand advertising, right?
Yeah.
And so I would ask you just to, as I write in my book, it's like you got time, talent, and treasure. Where can you commit more of that? And before you do that, how can you make that spiritual and psychological move toward thinking about these women more like not just a mass of humanity? Yeah. That's this big number. But it's like, oh, that's Susan, that's Betty, that's I'm using like old names.
Yeah, exactly.
They probably don't use those old names, but so that's Julie, because that's exactly who they are, by the way. When you look at Planned Parenthood's most recent annual report, I don't have the exact number, but it's 380,000 abortions or some insane number. Yeah, that's true. That's a big number. Each one of those was Julie, Sarah, Beth, Susan, and keep going, right?
Yeah.
Are you thinking about them as family? Will you be willing to do what it takes to help them? And I think what we're talking about now, at least in the Thrive model, is not so much the rescue after the fact, right? Yeah. But proactively getting out there and winning in their minds before they even face the issue in the future.
Yeah.
And that ultimately, I would put forward, I would say, is how we're going to win this. When we're all willing as pro-life people to do what it takes to get this Thrive brand. I'm not saying it just has to be, maybe some other brand comes along too, wonderful. But right now, the only thing I've seen is the Thrive brand that has proven that it can win against Planned Parenthood in a competitive battle. When we're willing to step up and make that brand happen nationwide and basically replicate nationwide, city by city, what happened in St. Louis. When we do that, we're going to win. We're going to win. Because you know what? A lot of pro-lifers who work in this full time know exactly what I mean when I say this. Women do not want to get an abortion. They don't. They don't. I bet you probably, if you asked a typical pro-lifer, hey, why do you think women get an abortion? They'd probably say something like, well, clump of cells or something like that. That's not why. It's, for the vast majority of them, it's a financial issue. It's first of all, it's all fear-based, of course. So what are those fears? Financial issue. I already have a kid. I can't, I'm single mother, can't lose my job, can't take care of my kid. There's no father around. In the college girls, it's, I can't, my career, it's always fear-based. It has nothing to do with that they don't think there's a human in there. I think that's like 1970s thinking.
Agreed.
It's like they know. They've been around enough now, they know. But it doesn't matter because they're so scared that even though they know and they might not want to do it, I think at heart of hearts, very few women are so hard-hearted that they're just do it anyway. Yeah. They don't want to do it. But we have to be there and show them that having this child actually accrues to the benefit of where you want to go in your life. Yeah. If you can do that authentically and persuasively, not manipulatively, if you can do that authentically and persuasively, as Thrive has, and you can do that and you scale it nationwide, you're going to win. We're going to win. And it's like, it gives me such great hope, John, because I believe it's going to happen. We're going to win. And I know right now it's like people are like probably a little bit frustrated because it's like our culture is like a lot of insane stuff going on. And I get it. But I would even argue, we were talking about the Gallup data, even if 95% of Americans said they were pro-choice, we can still win because it's still about offering a product to the woman who's choosing. And if your product is better and you persuade her that it's better and she believes that she's going to choose your product, you can still win.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I am so thankful for those closing remarks, because I was saying Francis de Sales was reading him recently, and he was just arguing that, the growth from sin to holiness is the work of a lifetime, and your call to, transformation and deepening in your own experience and witness of that deepening. Yeah, because we would put you on that top of the pedestal as like, look at this guy. I mean, he is doing it. He's accomplished so much, and he is, bringing in such great successes and gains for the pro-life movement. We could never be like him, but even your own witness and testimony is you're still working on it. And so are we. And that's exactly what we need to be doing. So what a great call. I really appreciate you doing that. So Brett, just thank you so very much for joining us today. I'm really excited. I was really looking forward to this, and it didn't let me down in the least. So I really appreciate you.
Well, John, thank you for having me. I love Catholic Gentleman. I've been following it, like I said, from the beginning, from when it was kind of a little more rudimentary. Yeah. I love the content. I love the mission. Man, do we need the kind of stuff that you all put out, because the culture just isn't helping us at all in things that we're engaging with day by day. So we need that reset. We need that meat of content that challenges us to step up and be Catholic men and Catholic gentlemen, but be virtuous and be willing to lead and to have courage, right? I think that's going to be so important in the coming years. It's like you got to step up and say something. Do it with charity, of course, but we can't back down. We have to step forward and be willing to just say the truth, to not only say the truth, but to live the truth. And then to bring a lot of other men and women along with us as we go win this war.
Amen. Yeah. Well, thank you again for being here, and thanks to the listeners. And as we end each of our episodes, be a man, be a saint.